at which time we'll be able to find our seats in anticipation of our program. Thank you. Friends, this is a very special occasion, the dedication of this Kingdom Hall. Several years of work and effort have gone into the building of this hall. And when we look around us, we see the blessings of Jehovah's Holy Spirit. We look forward to this program, but before we do so, let's take the time to attain Jehovah's blessing in a word of song and prayer. I'd like to invite everyone to stand, and let's sing song number 202. To God we are dedicated, and then we'll open with prayer. That's song 202. Go to Jehovah in prayer. The first part on this program this afternoon is the history of Jehovah's Witnesses in this area, and this will be delivered to us by Brother Ivan Hebb of the Sweetwater Congregation. Brother Hebb.
Well, I'm sure we all enjoy history, don't we? Especially when we talk about the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. We find that in this area that the witnesses have grew tremendously over the years. to quite a number of congregations. But how far would you like to go back in history to take a little look at the past? Would 1980 be all right? Well, how about 1970? Well, let's go a little farther back. Let's go to 1960. Wouldn't it be nice to go clear back to 1950? Oh, yes, it sure would. But you think a minute, 1950, 50 years ago? How much has it grew in that period of time? Well, let's go back and see. Follow along with my notes here. We got some dates and things, but I think it'll be interesting to learn where it came from. In October of 1950, they formed the first congregation in La Mesa. And they met in La Mesa in a little store building in La Mesa Boulevard, right on the corner. First they started meeting in the old post office building, and I believe that was probably it. I'm not for sure about that. But that's where they started out with their meeting. They had 34 publishers at that time to start their congregation. Maybe some of you know Brother Edgar Flynn at that time. He was the congregation servant that started out with that congregation. Their territory was, let's see here. It went from, they took in La Mesa, Lemon Grove, and Spring Valley. Now that included Casa de Oro. Now can you imagine one congregation with that much territory to work? I'm sure that it took them some time to work it, and probably they didn't get around to it. It was about 1958 when I first came to this area. My wife and I, we came here from Kansas, from Topeka, Kansas. And we moved in and spent a little time at the beach, and then we moved out to Lemon Grove, and we started attending the congregation there in, I believe it was probably in 1959 was probably our first meeting there in first of the year. And at that time, they were thinking about building a new Kingdom Hall there on Lamar Street, so they acquired the property, and they built a Kingdom Hall there on Lamar Street, 9052 Lamar Street. That was the old Kingdom Hall that was there, a nice A-frame hall. It was small, seated probably around 80 to 100, I believe, with the seating there, but it soon filled up and it grew. But they started out in that congregation, in that Kingdom Hall, with two congregations, La Mesa and the Lemon Grove congregation. The building was a cement block building, cement block Kingdom Hall. I remember having to mix cement and keep it to the brothers as they were laying the concrete blocks. And then we watched them put up the A-frames. I see Carl smiling. He remembers the A-frame that the framing and stuff that we did for it. But it was an interesting, very interesting building. It was well built. It carried the need at that time, and to what was needed. But now, as you know, that Kingdom Hall is not there anymore. It was removed, and now they have a nice new Kingdom Hall there built. Probably within about the last 5 years, that Kingdom Hall was built. So the congregations continued to grow and expand, didn't it? It was, while I was attending that congregation there, I was in the Lemon Grove congregation. Our territory, if my memory serves me correctly, was Highway 8 was one boundary. The edge of Bonita was the other boundary, down in Bonita. The other one was Euclid Avenue, and then it went clear past, clear into the edge of the hill past Mount Helix. So it was a pretty good-sized territory that we had to work in. It's a lot larger than we have now, isn't it? By quite a little bit. So it's interesting how that things have grown. In 1964 to 65, two congregations were formed, Lemon Grove South and Lemon Grove North. And very soon, that grew to 4 congregations, and that little Kingdom Hall began to get overcrowded, and certainly more room was needed. And the expansion was there, you know, and well, how do we get expansion? Jehovah's Spirit, isn't it, is what helps us to expand. If Jehovah's Spirit helps us to grow, to expand. So we find that Kingdom Hall. So then we decided that, well, it was just about time that we built another Kingdom Hall. So in about 1971, we acquired some property, which was this, and then the dirt strip over there. We acquired that for for some fees that was owed on it, and so we acquired that one, which gave us quite a bit of land to work from. So now we're up to the point of this first Kingdom Hall that was built on this lot. And what we're going to do, Brother Mashik is going to now come and he's going to pick up and fill us in on kind of a little bit of the background about this hall and kind of what happened a few years after. Brother Mashik, please.
Yeah, those were very exciting times. Jehovah really was putting the blessing on Jehovah's people. You could see the expansion constantly, and we kept growing, and our halls became bigger and bigger, and we needed to fill them, and we did. Jehovah really blessed our efforts. There's a nice news release that was put out when we built this first Hamashaw Kingdom Hall. In this news release, this is the way it reads. It says, a new Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses at 9605 Hamashaw Boulevard, Spring Valley, was dedicated Friday through Sunday, July 28th through the 30th. The new hall will serve two congregations, the Lemon Grove North and Lemon Grove South. The hall is a white stucco, red tile roof, following the Spanish motif, contrasted with white interior and orange shag carpeting. I thought that'd get a laugh. With matching theater seats and gold drapes at the platform. Ornamental lamps grace the walls, while two large black upholstered chairs were on the speaker stand, giving the stage an inviting appearance. That was our Kingdom Hall. We have wonderful memories from that. The excitement of building it. It took 6 months to build it. That sounds like a long period, but a short period. We spent some time on this Kingdom Hall. But that was 6 months of building. That was 6 months of hammering nails. How long did it take to have them, our regional and us local brothers and sisters, build this Kingdom Hall? 4 basic days. Yes, the underground was in. There was a lot of compacting to do, a lot of things to do. But isn't it wonderful that we had a Kingdom Hall here that serviced such a large area? We had the Lemon Grove, north and south, as the article said. Lemon Grove north was changed to Lemon Grove south was changed to La Presa. That was the names that were given at that time period. Shortly after that, we had Sweetwater in 74 was formed, and then after that, Bonita was formed in 86. So again, we're up to capacity. We had the hall filled. We had many publishers that were married here in the old Kingdom Hall and remember it with great fondness. But we really could see Jehovah's blessing on the effort at that time period. And we can see the effort on the blessing on Jehovah's period now. But of course, at this time, it's just about now is when the Spanish started coming to the hall too, and their expansion started tremendously.
Thank you, Brother Mashik. We appreciate that. Well, again, we've certainly seen Jehovah's organization grow, haven't we? And the number of congregations in this area and how much it's expanded. But now also, like Brother Mashik mentioned, that, the Spanish have grew too. And they have expanded a lot here. And they're still growing to a great degree. So we asked Brother Condi if he wouldn't come out and give us a little bit on the Spanish congregation. He'll talk a little bit about in English, but he will also speak some in Spanish too, I believe. Brother Condi, please.
I'll try. Well, brothers and sisters, what I'm going to talk about is the history of the Lomita Village congregation. Actually, the history goes way back to the congregation. There was a congregation in Lamar, in the Kingdom Hall in Lamar. The name of that congregation was El Cajon, Spanish. I joined that congregation in 1974. And the congregation kept growing and growing up and up. Finally, in 1985, it had to be divided. And the group that went to El Cajon City, actually, they took the name with them. And the ones that we stood in that Kingdom Hall, we had the name of Spring Valley Spanish congregation. And we kept growing and growing. So, in 1993, we had to divide it again. And then appeared the congregation Lomita Village and Central, two congregations. And about around those days, we had to move to this Kingdom Hall, the old one, And so we kept growing, more and more. And in 1998, we had to divide again. As a matter of fact, a group from Central and a group from our congregation formed the congregation Kingsview. The Kingsview. But let me tell you something about the history of the why we had this name of the this congregation, Lomita Village. In those days, we had the greatest concentration of Spanish-speaking people was in an area that is surrounded by, actually in Lomita Village, you know, and it was surrounded by the Hamacha Road, Skyline, and Cardiff, and Middlebrook. That area was Lomita Village. Years and years ago, it used to be a little town in there. So, but anyways, when Kingsview was created, they took our territory. So they came to be the kings on that territory. So you know why we cede that territory to them? Because we love them so much. Our love for them goes from here to Hawaii. So we love them. That's why they otherwise they would never hear it. Anyways, that is the history of the congregation of Lomita Village. And now I'm going to say it in Spanish. La historia de la congregación Lomita Village va hacia atrás hasta los años 74, cuando yo me junté con la congregación del Cajón. El Cajón era una congregación, la única congregación que había en español en esta área. Y entonces siguió creciendo esa congregación y en 1985 se tuvo que dividir la congregación de El Cajón. Y los hermanos que fueron asignados para El Cajón, de hecho se movieron a la ciudad del Cajón y se llevaron el nombre. Y nosotros llegamos a ser Spring Valley Spanish. Y siguió creciendo la congregación Spring Valley Spanish hasta el grado de que en 1993 tuvimos que dividirnos. Y entonces fue cuando se creó la congregación Lomita Village. Y fue por esos años, por ese año que nos movimos a este Salón del Reino el Viejo, que ya fue destruido. Bueno, y seguimos creciendo y creciendo y creciendo. Entonces, en 1998 se dividió otra vez y se crearon dos grupos. Un grupo de la congregación de Spring Valley, Lomita Village, y de la central se formó otra congregación que vino a ser la Kingsview. Se creó otra congregación. Y la cosa curiosa es que nosotros, ¿por qué escogimos el nombre de Lomita Village? Porque teníamos en nuestro territorio la más grande concentración de hispanohablantes era en el área, lo que es el pueblito, era un pueblito hace muchos años que se llamaba Lomita Village, que está rodeado por las calles Hamacha Road, Skyline, Cardiff y Middlebrook. Y esa área era la más grande concentración de hispanos allí. Y finalmente los hermanos de Kingsview se la llevaron. Se quedaron con ese territorio que habíamos escogido de allí nosotros para nombrar la congregación Lomita Village. Y ahora ellos son los reyes de allí. Kingsview. ¿Y qué vamos a hacer? ¿Y saben por qué les cedimos ese territorio a los hermanos de la Kingsview? Porque nuestro amor por ellos los queremos mucho. Y nuestro amor por ellos va desde aquí hasta Hawái. Por eso si no hubiera habido ese amor, nunca lo hubieran tenido ese territorio. Esa es la historia, hermanos, de la congregación Lomita Village. That's the history of Lomita Village.
Thank you very much, Brother Condi. You delivered that in 2 languages for us. We appreciated that. So as you see, the congregations have grew in the area, and they've expanded. Kingdom halls have been built. congregations formed in this area. Since I've been here, I've seen it grow to no end, from no kingdom halls to 2 kingdom halls that are completely filled, almost. So it's been a grand thing to be able to stand back and to watch the growth in this area and how much Jehovah has blessed all of our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Heb, for those wonderful memories. We're sure that you'll enjoy a visual presentation by Brother Doug Fraser of the Lakeview congregation, also assisted by Brother Paul Bilal. It's been said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. We think that you'll find this to be true. Brother Fraser, please.
There's our Kingdom Hall. You no doubt remember this Kingdom Hall. You've attended it so many times, many of you. But the time came when the Kingdom Hall, although it had served its purpose for many years, about 28 years, the time came when we needed more room for more congregations, so it just had to go. Once the vegetation was cut down, then a brother came and ground up the stumps, and gradually we were able to remove the Kingdom Hall because we needed more room. This was early in June of 2000 that we started in on the demolition of the old Kingdom Hall, and it was completed about November of 2000. You remember the inside? Some people didn't like the speaker stand, but it worked. And there gives us some memories of our Kingdom Hall long ago. The next few pictures will show you the demolition of the hall. It took quite some time. It took from early June of 2000 to somewhere around November of 2000 to demolish the hall. And this consumed quite a bit of time, meaning then that the new hall that is built and is standing here now that we're sitting in could not be built immediately because of the need to remove the old hall and make room for the new one. Also, you noticed in the earlier picture there was a strip of land that was not being used, so that was incorporated into this new Kingdom Hall and its parking lot. This shows you a lot of the work that was being done to demolish the hall. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of hard work, and it had been well put together. Now, we had to clean the floor very well because the concrete had to be recycled. And if the concrete was not clean, it could not be recycled. So we had to scrape the floors clean, get out the wiring and all of the insulation, electrical. It just was a lot of work. And the brothers worked on that real hard, really supported the work till we could get this hall out of the road and then prepare for our new Kingdom Hall that we're sitting in right now. Now, some of the materials, like the framework there, the lumber, was in good condition, so it was saved, and it was sent down to our brothers in Mexico. They could use it for building halls down there for the framing. Much of the material, though, was of no use and had to be simply disposed of. Gradually, it came down. Less and less of it. I don't think, though, that if you didn't work on the demolition that you can really appreciate how much work it was to bring that hall down. Took a good 4 months. Well, actually more than that, nearly 6 months. And we're just coming to the end now. Just the last cleanup. One more wall. And then tramp it all down. Scoop it all up. Put it all in the dumpster. Then haul it away. There it's gone at last. Our poor old Kingdom Hall disappeared. Well, they put the stakes in for the grading, and now they have to move a lot of the dirt from the west side of the Kingdom Hall over to the east side in order to make the proper drainage. Then they brought in these blocks, deposited them here, ready to build the block wall that runs along the south side. And here they're digging the footing for the block wall that was installed along the south side of our Kingdom Hall and along the west side of the Kingdom Hall. There's the wall going up now, and then of course it was finished, plastered on the outside, stuccoed so that it looks real nice now. If you haven't seen that wall, you got to go out and have a look at it. It's pretty fancy. Then they had to do a lot of ditching in order to lay in the water lines, the gas lines, the electric lines, the telephone lines, and so on. So the ditching had to be done, and then they put in the curbs. But in the meantime, we all had to eat. So this is the kitchen that was over there on the side, just out of the area where we were building. Good food. Oh, we enjoyed those meals. Not much of a place to sit, but the food was sure good. Well, then we moved the kitchen over onto the area where the Kingdom Hall would be sitting so that we could go ahead and put in the parking lot. These brothers were using that digging machine to dig holes for the fences and also putting in the trees. This brother is helping to put up the chain link fence that runs along the south side between us and the school. Here they are using that machine again. They had to actually sit on top of that thing. The ground is so hard, it just wouldn't go down. Well, the cement truck started coming so as we could pour the footings or the curbs, and now the first part of the parking lot. There it is. Way at the east end, and we're looking west there. Here's another section of the parking lot going in. Brothers put in the stakes so there'll be the proper grade there. Early in the morning, the fog hadn't even lifted yet. Brothers are out there working, putting in the parking lot down in the southeast corner. Up next to the store, here they are again, putting in the parking lot. And the brothers came from Yuma, Arizona, with this Power Screed, is this machine. They left at 2 o'clock in the morning. This brother owns this company, brought his entire crew with him and the machinery, worked all day, packed up the machinery, and they drove all the way back to Yuma that night as a contribution to our Kingdom Hall. Wasn't that wonderful? Now you can see the parking lot is pretty well in, but we're going to switch now to an action shot. We'll zoom in here on the parking lot and see what they're up to. Well, there they are, pouring the parking lot. Now that area in the center there, just on the other side of the cement truck, that's where the Kingdom Hall is going to be. We put in all of the parking lot first. And now you see it in action. We'll come up a little closer here. Isn't that nice? Nice and smooth concrete. That's what we drive on now. You would never know that, would you? Concrete work is very, very hard work. And the brothers did it very willingly. Oh, they're not lazy. They're not standing around because they're lazy. They're waiting for the next cement truck to back in. And that's one of the brothers finishing the concrete. They go over it and over it to make it smooth and hard. Now there's that power screed. You see it there, that roller? And as he pours the cement in there, that thing starts to spin. And you can see that take place here in a moment. And it smooths the cement out, packs it down, leaves it nice and smooth, and saves an awful lot of labor. See how it works? Pretty neat, isn't it? And those brothers came all the way from Yuma with that machine and the crew, that brother that owns the company, just to help us out. Now, a lot of his crew were not, or at least several on his crew were not Jehovah's Witnesses. He brought them along and he paid their wages for that day. All as a contribution to this hall. But you have no idea how much time, how much labor that machine saves. Well, now how much concrete did they use? Well, we figured it out, and it's 1,200 cubic yards of concrete. How many cement trucks? Look at them lined up here. 127 truckloads, mixer truckloads of concrete went into this construction. Well, after the parking lot was complete, we started in on the Kingdom Hall itself, and there you could see them starting to dig the footings. Well, we had to move the kitchen from off of where the Kingdom Hall was going to be and move it over here to the west end next to the shop over here. And when you came in the gate, you had to check in here so that you could work. And here was the first aid on the left and the safety department on the right. And we can say that because all of the brothers worked so carefully, no one was injured in the entire demolition or construction of this hall. No serious injury. The shot that you just saw was the lot that was to the east of our Kingdom Hall, and the owner allowed us to use that as our parking lot free for the building of our Kingdom Hall. Now here they are digging the footings. That's for the foundation of the hall. And they're putting in the forms for the concrete. And the piping, the electrical, water, a high pressure water for the sprinkler system, telephone, electric, all of that had to be put in and then covered up. And these are the drain lines, the sewer line from the bathrooms. It goes on out, down, connects in with the sewer on Hamishal Boulevard. Those pipes that are sticking up on the right, those are where the bathrooms will be, the two bathrooms. Those are the drain lines for the bathroom. Now, the building of the actual Kingdom Hall started on December the 6th, 2001, the actual building of the hall. Now, you can see after they got all of the pipes and lines in, they filled it back in, compacted it, now they're putting in the steel. So can you imagine where we're sitting on this floor? Look at all the steel that is in right down there below us, making this one solid slab. In the meantime, the brothers were over in the northeast corner making the drain there where the water runs through a pipe all the way down just out almost onto Hamishal Boulevard where it ends up. So they're busy making that drain. Now, if you'd like to see it, you can walk down there. It's still there. And up at this end, there's the drain that you see near the gate. Well, here we are pumping with a large pumper. The cement truck backs in and unloads onto that pumper truck. And look at that. It goes up through that big boom and delivers it right where the brothers want it exactly. What a labor saver that was. See that? Isn't that interesting? And of course, there's always a clown, even in the safety department. Well, this paddle machine left the concrete nice and hard and smooth. It goes around and around and around, and the brother just keeps moving it around. These are the pipes sticking up that will be connected, of course, with electric lines and gas and so on and so on. This brother's scooping out some of the concrete here for the drain in the bathroom. Did you notice there's a drain in the bathroom? The water overflows or anything? Well, that's what he's putting in right now. And the tile work. Now they're putting the tile in the front of the Kingdom Hall, right where you walk in the entrance. They're putting the tile down. Then they covered it with plywood during the construction so it wouldn't get chipped or anything. And there it is, still there. Now we're backing up to give you some of the action here. We had a lot of still shots, but now we're going to have some action shots. A lot of the ditching and putting in the lines as well as the foundation. Doesn't that give you an idea of how much steel was put into this building, into the floor? It's not going to go anywhere in a hurry. There's how it looked from way down at the east end, looking back this way. That's, of course, just ready before we poured it with that big pump machine that you saw in the still pictures. Well, there's the first wall that went up, the very first one, on the west end, and right on the other side of the wall is where we mounted the electrical supply, as well as other utilities that were coming into the building. There's the wall up, the first one, way at the far end. And over to the right-hand side in the background is the kitchen. Very important part of the build. At least I thought it was, and I think some of the other brothers too. This is where we stored some of the equipment in these big containers up right next to the kitchen area there. And here we are with making the drain that takes the water down to Hamishal Boulevard. Taking real pride in his work. And the landscaping, right next to the Hamishal Boulevard here. This area that's not paved, that's the sidewalk now that runs all the way around the Kingdom Hall. That was the last thing poured with concrete, was that sidewalk. Here they are putting in the tile in the bathroom, which we saw in the still pictures. Well, here it is in action. You see the drains in the floor there? And the pipes coming up are where the hand basins, toilets, and everything will be connected when the building is finished, and they put these items into the bathroom. They're mixing the grout. That brother's not lost, he's just checking on things. See? He knew we were talking about him. This is out at the entrance to the Kingdom Hall. You walk on that every time you come in through the door. But as I said, they covered it over during the build. See, he knows we're looking at him. And the electrical, pulling in, oh, how many feet of electric lines through the electrical conduit. There you see it in action. Oh, the kitchen. Back to the kitchen. That's an important place. Well, they served just during the build itself, not the demolition or the preparation for the build or afterwards, but only for the build itself, they served 6,700 meals. And you talk about delicious food. I think it beats hometown buffet. Oh, and guard duty at night. Oh, it was cold. This was in the wintertime. Not as cold as Alaska, but it was chilly. So they were on guard duty because of all of the equipment and all of the supplies that were on the site had to be guarded. I do not need to explain why. Well, here's the first wall going up now in action. And the pipes there next to the wall, of course, those are going to be the pipes that will bring in the electrical, the water, telephone, gas, and on and on. Now there are the electric cabinets that will be moved up against the wall. There they are. They have one in place. They're going to move the other one in. And that was necessary because from these electric cabinets, all the different electric lines would run from there throughout the hall as they build it. They're laying out the 2x4s now for the walls. They build the walls laying down flat. Just like this. They're building the wall. They don't build the wall standing up, but right flat. There it goes. They all lift it up together. Put some braces against it to hold it there. Bolt it down tight to the floor with big steel bolts. And now they're getting ready to move some of the lumber over where the brothers can use it. The wall in the background, which isn't complete, is the central wall between the two halls. It's a double wall with a space between, and there's no sound is transmitted from there. You see it there. No sound goes from one hall to the other. Now you can see where the electric is there at the end of the building. That was the first wall that went up. Here goes another one. They're working on that wall between the two buildings there. That's what they're sheeting in right now. There it goes up. So that was really the first wall that was completed after the one at the end. Now they're sheeting in the building completely. And then over top of that, of course, will go the chicken wire, they call it, and then the stucco. Here it is early in the morning. Gives you some idea of the framing from the inside, all the different rooms and so on. Now we come to the roof trusses. They put these two roof trusses and fastened them together and made a platform. There's the platform. And on that platform, they put the blowers for the sound equipment. Those blowers are overhead. The units themselves, you'll see in the pictures coming up, were on the outside. But there it is. They took the big crane and lifted the entire unit right up and set it down right there. Two of them, one for each one of the halls. Then they went ahead and added all of these roof trusses one at a time with this lift. Now they're putting the sheeting on top for the roof. Everything was closed in with the sheeting, and now up on the roof you see the tar paper being rolled out. They put heavy tar paper on there, and after that, even if there's a light rain or a moderate rain, it won't do the hall any damage. So we were very fortunate. We didn't have any rain up to this point. I think about here we had just a little light sprinkle, and that's all there was. Now they're loading the roof, what they call loading the roof, putting all the tile up on the roof in neat little piles. Now this must be done before either the drywall is put on the inside or the stucco on the outside, or they will crack. So that is what they call loading the roof. Well, you know where that is. That's our favorite place. Back at the kitchen. Well, let's get away from the kitchen a minute. We'll look up here at the roof. They had to put vents, also vents up there in the roof before they put the tile down. Back you know where. Can't you just smell that food cooking? Boy. Truly, those meals were delicious. Now back inside, they're discussing here what they're going to do. After some discussion, I think they decided. And they're still working on the roof. So you'll see then that there's work going on inside, topside, everywhere. Brothers were working. In the kitchen, landscaping, finishing up concrete, plastering walls, and even taking care of first aid. We didn't have much business in first aid though, which we're very thankful for. Here they're plastering that sign out there that contains our address right now. This is the carpenter shop where they got things ready to go in. You'll recognize some of those folks. Everything was set up. So you can see while somebody's inside working, somebody's outside preparing something. It was just like a beehive. Or maybe an anthill, huh? Ants are such good workers. And they set up an enclosure where they could spray paint the doors. All the doors that were going to be used mounted inside the hall. These are the ducts from the air conditioning and return air. All of this had to be brought in. Do you know that the brothers spent months designing the air conditioning? This is a brand new design. There are no drafts. The units go on in stages as they're needed outside. There's 4 units for each hall, sitting out here at the back of the hall. And as the computer calls for it, these units come on or turn off as needed. It's the very latest design. And the air system is designed to exhaust the stale air containing carbon dioxide, which we're all breathing out, and get rid of it and bring in fresh air so that we don't get sleepy. Does anyone feel sleepy? Oh, that's a scratchy job, putting up that insulation, that fiberglass. Get that down your neck. Oh. Meanwhile, they're out there still landscaping. Just east of the drive where we come in. And there's the new fence that was going up. This is some of the equipment that was ready to be installed, different kinds of equipment. You notice incandescent Phillips lighting, that would be the lamps. And lots of compost, just truckloads of it were put in around the plants. Here the sisters are working, planting the ground cover and the trees. Yeah, it was hot work. Digging those holes was not easy. This ground around here is very, very hard. Does this give you some appreciation of the amount of work that was put into this project? There they are, putting in the trees. Had a lot of heavy equipment for lifting various items around as needed. And they worked late into the night, too. Why is it we always keep coming back to the kitchen? Something we like about that. If you went away from here hungry, there was something wrong. And some brothers just love to eat. They just love to eat. Oh, we don't blame them. Of course, we had to drink a lot of water too because we were working. Now you see the chicken wire on there ready for the stucco. They're putting down the tile on the roof and the chicken wire's up. Now they're getting ready to, here we go. They're blowing on what they call the scratch coat. I don't think it's itchy, but I don't know why they call it that, but that's the first coat they put on. That's just the rough coat. Then they put the final coat, the nice colored coat on last. This is out in front of the hall. Sisters help too. And of course, here's the trailer where the business part of the work was being done. And inside the trailer, they were all busy. So everyone had a job. It didn't matter whether they were inside the hall or outside or whatever. Here's some of the air conditioning supplies waiting to be installed. And there are 4 units there. There's 4 units for each one of the ends of the Kingdom Hall, each one of the auditoriums. And inside, of course, the brothers were busy putting in all of the electrical and the wires for sound equipment, lighting. There's the drywall stacked in there ready to cover the walls on the inside. Now the chicken wire had to be put on first because of the hammering would break the drywall on the inside. So each thing has to be done in stages. You can't just go ahead and do it whatever way you feel like, but each part has to be built in a proper stage so that you don't damage what was done. Oh, drinking water, yep. And putting in the nice cabinets that we have for our literature and magazines. Operating the sewing machine. Getting down now to the carpet. Well, we had one injury. One brother, I won't mention his name, he cut his thumb there putting the carpet in. I won't mention him, who it was. But he found that he didn't even have to go to first aid. He just used duct tape. After 2 weeks, he took the duct tape off, and it was all better. Well, here we are counting out the bolts and nuts and screws and everything for the seats. Drilling the holes to drive in the bolts that will hold the seats. If you look down at the bottom of your seat, you'll find they're all bolted to the floor. Well, that's what they were doing. Drilling those holes and putting in the bolts. Working on the sound equipment at the sound desks. Now, of course, those bolts had to be put in exactly the right place, didn't they? Otherwise, the seats wouldn't fit. Wouldn't fit over the bolts. So it had to be very, very precise. In just a moment, you'll see the uprights now to which we bolted the seats and the backs. There you go. All these are bolted down to the bolts already in the floor, and then the seats and backs are brought in and bolted to the uprights. Just like a bunch of ants. coming in, you can see that's getting put together. Starting to look more and more and more like a Kingdom Hall. All right, we're back at the cabinet shop, and right next to the carpenter shop is the sound department. They're getting the loudspeakers ready to put into the ceiling. And here in the bathrooms, the brother's putting the tile on the wall. Here we see the shelves going in for the cabinets. And the ceiling going up. At another location, they were doing the work here, getting the doors and so on ready for the cabinets, staining them and finishing them. A lot of sanding and a lot of work to get them ready. And then they bring them over here and install them in the Kingdom Hall. Here they're getting them lined up ready. Here working on the seats again in action. And we're coming toward the completion. They're just finishing off the stage there. The first meeting that was held March the 3rd, 2002, 1 year and 6 months ago. And that's what it looked like around the time of the first meetings here. First day that we had meetings. Did you notice in that last picture there was no backdrop to the stage? It was just all plain. No pictures on the wall. Well, Sister Hendrickson and her crew moved in here a little later, and that all changed. See, there's nothing there. But now you notice the beautiful backdrop to the stage. Do you know what that's made out of? Rain guttering, covered with fabric, and then painted. And now we have the beautiful pictures and the flower arrangements that you'll see here. And that really dressed the hall up and made it absolutely beautiful inside. So it was approximately 1 year and 9 months from the time that we demolished the old Kingdom Hall until we had our first meeting in the new Kingdom Hall. And it's about 1 year and 6 months since we moved in. Here's some of the landscaping out in front. And there's a glimpse of our nice, pretty fence. Now inside to some of the beautiful pictures that were put up. There's the backdrop that we have now. And who would have guessed it's made out of rain guttering and covered with fabric. What a neat idea. If you haven't seen all the pictures, I invite you after the meeting to walk around and go to the other auditorium because all the pictures over there are different than the ones here. And you'll even have to go into the bathrooms because in there there's pictures. As well as beautiful flower arrangements. Yes, Jehovah God truly blessed the work of the hands of those building this Kingdom Hall as a center of true worship right here in Spring Valley. And how it has turned out so beautiful that we can use it now as a center of true worship here. Lakeview, that's where we get our name, the lake. So truly this is the most important building in this area, and may it always be used to Jehovah's praise and honor.
Thank you very much, Brother Frazier, for those fine pictures and those fine memories. Did you notice how many of those pictures had Brother Frazier in it? That's because he worked so hard on the project, and we really appreciate his efforts and also that wonderful part. We also enjoy positive experiences in the work that we do in our sacred service. Let's listen very carefully as Brother Kevin Bilger, also from the Lakeview congregation, as he shares with us building experiences of the Hamishaw Kingdom Hall. Brother Bilger.
Well, Brother Frazier touched on it just a little bit, but I'm going to take it a little bit further. Unusual ants. You notice how he talked about ants? Well, that heading, that strange headline, appeared some years ago in a newspaper article regarding a quickly built Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. Not this Kingdom Hall, but all the same, it did happen. Well, what inspired that headline is the question that we really want to ask ourselves. Well, it's not difficult to understand when we look at the aerial photograph of a construction site. Much the way we did from the hill up above us here at Dictionary Hill, looking down. Didn't that remind you of a bunch of ants on an anthill? I'm sure that you would agree that it was. The subtitle in the same newspaper article explained 500 witnesses of Jehovah on a construction site. A surrealistic anthill. Well, the comparison is quite apt. But maybe that reporter didn't really realize that. Now, granted, from far above, a few hundred people scrambling around a construction site may resemble ants on an anthill. But in the case that we're talking about this evening, the resemblance is more than superficial. And so what we want to ask ourselves is, why is that? Well, to find out, let us open our Bibles, if you will, to Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6, and notice verse 6, at what wise King Solomon of ancient Israel advised with regard to the ant. He said, "Go to the ant, see its ways, and become wise." So then, the question is, how can we become wise by observing these ants? Well, for one thing, Brother Frazier mentioned it. Ants get a lot of things done. Wouldn't you agree? But note what the Bible Encyclopedia, Insight on the Scriptures, has to say on this topic, and I quote, "Not only is their instinctive preparing for the future notable, but also their persistence and determination, often carrying or tenaciously dragging objects weighing twice their own weight, doing everything possible to fulfill their particular task, and refusing to turn back even though they may fall, slide, or roll down some steep rock face." Now, clearly, friends, none of us carried twice our weight around this Kingdom Hall construction site. In fact, if I was doing that, you'd have been calling the paramedics right away. But really what we want to understand is that here, in the case of this Kingdom Hall in Spring Valley, this place of education that we built, we did, on a regular basis, amaze our neighbors on how quickly things were becoming done, or getting done. So then, the question, how did we get it all done? Well, let's go back to our insight on the scriptures, and it will become very apparent to you what the other key to ants and how they respond. It says, and I quote, "Remarkably cooperative, they keep their nest very clean and show concern for their fellow workers, at times assisting injured or exhausted ants back to the nest." Well, certainly, all would agree that a similar cooperative spirit was here among all who helped in our building of this Kingdom Hall. Yes, a tremendous effort accomplished with a smile in a relaxed atmosphere by about 80 professionals representing every part of the building industry, along with those who helped them, the 2,370 volunteers that helped to build this congregation, or this Kingdom Hall. However, all the hard work and the cooperation that we as Jehovah's Witnesses put into this Kingdom Hall are only a foretaste to what takes place on the inside of these walls on a regular basis, and yes, into the future. And so whether this was your first Kingdom Hall, or maybe your 100th Kingdom Hall that you've helped build, what a memorable experience it was to share in this project. And as it is with all of the things that we do that are memorable, we like to look back a little bit, don't we? We always like to reminisce. And so just for a little while this afternoon or this evening, we're going to reminisce on some of the things that were of outstanding experiences that maybe some of us never experienced. In fact, one of the experiences that I noted was that working at night. How many of us remember working at night? We're trying to get all the sand ready for the brothers so that they can put the rebar in. They had to have it done that night. Had all these cars lined up on both sides of this Kingdom Hall, incidentally, which is 100 feet long, all the headlights on, and we were out there just having a blast. Amazing. What do you think our neighbors were thinking? Oh, they're crazy. But we were getting work done, just like those ants. What about those who worked so very hard, friends, to take care of the security during this build? Many of our brothers and sisters worked all day long at their secular jobs, and then they came here and spent the evening only to get up the next morning and go back to work again. Those are loving brothers and sisters, those who offered themselves willingly. Another thought that I thought about was the night that everybody had to show up and insulate the walls. Brother Frazier mentioned that's a pretty itchy job, but you know, there were so many of us here, it was amazing. We were kind of even wondering how many would show up if we'd have to do it all night long. Well, you know what, friends? The Kingdom Hall, both sides, were insulated in just less than 3 hours. That is offering ourselves willingly. And how can we not mention the food? 6,700 meals during the build alone. What a wonderful experience it was for those, especially our sisters, our big workforce, to take care of us while we built this Kingdom Hall. Certainly they have many memories there as well. And what about the time when we were all working here late into the evening, putting the sprinkler systems in? Many of the brothers that were working on these fire sprinklers in this Kingdom Hall had never, ever done that type of work. And yet they stayed late to help the brothers, incidentally, that came clear from Riverside to help us with our Kingdom Hall. And I remember one brother telling me, he says, well, they're getting ready to turn that water on and test it. If it's going to leak, it's going to leak right here where we're standing, because that's where I was working. 12 o'clock at night, a cold night in December. And sure enough, we were all standing right in that same spot, and we all looked right at him and said, you know what, you're right. It was your fault. No, friends, those are good experiences, aren't they? Very good experiences. Things that nobody will ever be able to take away from us. And incidentally, that old Kingdom Hall, I've got a pretty good keepsake about that. This is a bolt that came out of the very first chair that we took apart. So if you ever want to remember that old Kingdom Hall that did very well for this community for a long time, I've got one little piece of it left. Friends, there are many, many experiences with regards to our build. And we will remember them and we'll talk about them for years to come. Hopefully we'll be talking about them when we build the next Kingdom Hall. Hopefully we can outgrow this Kingdom Hall. But I'd like to just take a few moments with some of the brothers and sisters, or brothers in particular, that really got to share or have an important role in the building of this Kingdom Hall. First of all, I'd like to introduce to you Brother Jim Hill, one of the one of the brothers from the elders from the local congregation of the Lakeview congregation. Now, Brother Hill, one of the first obstacles that we faced on this project was the need for more parking spaces. And so, can you kind of fill us in on how we were able to do that?
Yes, Brother Bilger, it's kind of interesting because Brother Hebb mentioned the dirt lot that used to be out here, probably where the friends have their cars parked right now. We acquired that because the man that had the land refused to accept the offer. He was the same one we bought our property from here for the original hall. He refused to accept the offer that the county made when they built the school here. And of course the county had the power to take the property by eminent domain, and it left that strip there because they could only take what they had to have. Well, one thing led to another, and the man approached us and said he wanted us to buy the property because he was landlocked, and he had a plot map that showed an access right through the stage of our old Kingdom Hall to his piece of property. And Brother Barwick told us that even though it was very likely he wouldn't be able to make that stand, there still was a chance if we went to court. And believe it or not, we purchased that piece of property for $2,200. Imagine what it would have cost if we'd had to purchase it right before we built this Kingdom Hall. The other thing was the little piece of property that was right in front of where our parking lot on the east side used to be. Different times, in fact, not too long after that piece of property was bought there, we had the opportunity to buy that, or it was sold at auction because of taxes that were due on it. Unfortunately, we didn't bid high enough to get it at that time, and we always thought it would sure be nice to just square the property off and have it for future purposes. Well, when we started the plans for this hall, one of the things that we found out was we had a problem with visibility. One of the engineers, I think it was Brother Chernish, noticed when he was on the old driveway going out, and he looked down Hamishaw Boulevard that way. He says, this is not going to work. We can't see far enough because there was a hump of ground there, you may remember, right behind the olive tree. You couldn't see past that. So now we have to get that piece of property. And at different times, the people that owned that property had approached us and asked us if we wanted to purchase it, and we always said, no, we didn't really think so at this time. Well, now we needed it. And so we made an approach again, and Brother Frazier was the active one on that helped us work with that. And we approached them, asked them if they were still interested in selling, and sure enough, they were. And one thing led to another. We were able to acquire that piece of property for a very reasonable fee, and it really was critical to making it possible for us to put the whole project together as it stands now.
Very good. Thank you, Brother Hill. Certainly, friends. From that one experience, is there any doubt in your mind that Jehovah was certainly backing this build? Next, we have Brother Ted Sessions, an elder in the North National City congregation. As well, Brother Sessions serves as the committee chairman for the Regional Building Committee here in Southern California. Brother Sessions, would you go through some of the initial steps that it takes to build a Kingdom Hall?
Well, Brother Bilger, the society has made such a loving arrangement by regional building committees that at the outset now we meet with the bodies of elders that are contemplating either remodeling or looking for new property or building a new Kingdom Hall. And so we started this process, and I believe going back into my file, it was around 1987 that we started having some of our meetings, and at that time we were going to remodel the existing Kingdom Hall. Well, as discussions went on and time went by between the body of elders and the Regional Building Committee and the needs of the community, we decided that it would be better to tear the old hall down and build a new one because of the costs involved and looking at the whole picture of the thing. But then the problem began to arise that you friends created a big problem for us. You were preaching the good news of the kingdom, and there was such a growth in the area that we finally determined with the local bodies of elders that what we needed was not a single Kingdom Hall, but we needed a double Kingdom Hall here. So we began to put that package together, drawing plans for that, and I look back at my notes, and I believe it was in March 19th of 1998 that the conditional permit was put in for to do the construction here. So when we think about the building of Kingdom Halls, Brother Bilger, it's we get to the site and we do it quite rapidly, but the many years and months and weeks and meetings that go in beforehand with the local body of elders and the municipalities in the area, really it takes quite a long while. We're looking at a point now of 2 years when a group decides they want to buy, they purchase a property before we can actually get into the property. But I'd like to just say something else too in regards to the building programs. Back in 1995, we received a letter from the society, and they said they wanted to slow down the construction work in the United States so that they could concentrate more on the overseas areas for Kingdom Halls. But somehow it didn't happen. Jehovah was speeding the work up, and we find our load hasn't become easier, it's become heavier. And as I look at some of these projects, we start and I say, how are we going to get this done? And I looked at these pictures here this evening, and I know how we get them done. It's Jehovah's Spirit and this group of loving brothers and sisters that come out and work so hard that they make it all possible, and what a joy it is to work along with them. And I might just add too, if I got the moment, to just say that there's still a need, such a need in the area. We're working on a project down in the South Bay right now that a construction company offered us first choice on this choice piece of property. We've been working on it for quite some time now, and we're going back to them probably with an offer very shortly. The price has been set for a double Kingdom Hall in the Chula Vista area. But I want to say that the only way that these projects are possible is it's united effort of congregations round about, because projects today cost over $1 million. And there's no way that the friends of just 3 or 4 congregations can absorb that. So the Spirit has been around the area that some have relocated congregations, some have taken notes out on their existing Kingdom Hall that's been paid for, make direct contributions to these projects. So it's that spirit of giving that makes these possible, and we're praying about that one in Chula Vista, that this same spirit might prevail, because we need a double Kingdom Hall down there. So it's the hard work of the brothers and sisters makes it possible through the Regional Building Committee working along with them.
Thank you very much, Brother Sessions. Now we have with us also Brother Jack Hagenbach. He is also an elder in the North National City Congregation, and he also serves as the secretary of the Regional Building Committee. Brother Hagenbach, as far as building inspections go, and you're in the business, how do they usually are they handled? Are they easy? And if not, how did it happen here on our build?
Well, Brother Bilger, we've been to a lot of sites where the inspections are, I would say, you could call it a nightmare. We did a job up in Vista, and when it came time for the nailing inspection, the gentleman came out and just parked himself as if I'm him. Now, he just went to the wall and just seemed like he stood there. I don't know what he was counting, perhaps nail heads, but it took hours for him, and at that we didn't pass nailing inspection. He was just really super critical, but the brothers complied and were like nailing right behind him as he was going along, and it looked negative. They were just slamming nails in everywhere they could. So, but here on this hall now, we came to a point where as I recall, it was the weekend, right, or Friday night late or something like that, and we needed our first nailing inspection of I think the shear panels and the roofing, the sheeting up there. So all I was thinking of is, oh man, we're gonna lose a day or so, or maybe the whole weekend, because we had a problem getting weekend inspections. But you had your cell phone and you called, and you had a relationship somehow, because you'd been down there, I think, with Brother Cherney to get the permits and so forth, and so they kind of knew you. And you said something like, well, you know, we've got Jack Hagenbach here. He's a local contractor. And then you chuckled, and I didn't hear it, but you said to me, he said, oh, yeah, we work with him a lot. I'll tell you what, why don't you guys self-inspect? And we chuckled and laughed and everything else, but nevertheless, we self-inspected, and everything passed. It was amazing. So that was kind of a treat there, and I don't know, but it reminds me in Romans, the 13th chapter, about the superior authorities and how God has placed them there for our good. And if we could stretch that to apply to Jehovah's projects, why, that's the way it turned out. It was for our good. The building is reasonably structurally sound, and so everything turned out fine, and it just glorifies Jehovah's name in this whole matter.
Thank you very much, Brother Higgins. Now we're going to turn a little bit of our attention to Brother Mike Robigo, a local elder serving in the Bonita congregation. And Brother Robigo played a very important role in our build. Not only did you notice there in the pictures that he was one of our big eaters, he played an important role on a serious note with regards to the accounting of all the money that was being spent. Brother Robigo, what was some of the outstanding experiences that stick in your mind with regards to some of those accounting situations that arose?
Well, there are many experiences about those accounting experiences, but the thing is that we watch closely. We produce a report every month, and we watch closely those expenses. And of course, we give it to the brothers and so forth. I have that all computerized. And so because of that watching closely, and because of the volunteer work of the $485,000 that we got from the society on loan, almost $100,000 of that went back because of good accounting skills, I'm sure. But really, Brother Fraser mentioned one thing that was really outstanding, and it truly is outstanding. I remember pouring the concrete in sections, pouring concrete on the parking lot. That was hard work, and I didn't realize it until I actually saw it. And I remember you mentioned, oh yeah, the Humer brothers are coming, and weeks will go by and no Humer brothers. And we had this big section right in front and over there, most of that down in, and I'm wondering, when are these Humer's brothers coming? Well, it was 6 o'clock, and it was still dark, and here come the cars start rolling in, thundering up the mountain, that hill over there, and they came up there and started working right at 7 in the morning, and it was almost dark before they were finally finished. And it's true, that brother brought his crew over here. Some of them he paid because they're worldly, and he paid them, and no doubt over $5,000 worth of cost for him, and we donated that to us. But one thing though for sure, one of the younger brothers that came with him, that owned that, he told me, he says, Mike, this is one of the best sites I've worked at. I said, why is that? It's because I get to talk to the friends. I said, why? He says, normally at other sites, I have to do all the work. But because of the volunteer effort here, I can enjoy myself. That's a blessing to the congregation, the volunteers.
Thank you, Brother Robert. Those brothers from Yuma also mentioned that the food was excellent too. Probably one of the best meals they've ever been on. So our hats are off to our sisters who worked so hard. But that's not all, friends. One of our friends commented, and I will quote him, "It is really difficult to put into words exactly how it felt to see our new Kingdom Hall being built. I think this project of working together made us feel like a family, knowing that each one did his part. Our unity and organization surely prove that we have Jehovah's backing. This project is something that we will remember as being special forever." Another one of the friends had this to say, "Working side by side this way with the brothers has made me feel a lot closer to them. I really feel a part of this organization of Jehovah's. There's no better way of life. No one can walk away from such an experience and feel alone. Jehovah's Spirit is here." Well, friends, during the building of this Kingdom Hall, enthusiasm, zeal, and a positive spirit contributed to the success of this building. The same spirit should continue as we seek to bring many more persons to a knowledge of the truth and encourage them to meet with us here in this new Kingdom Hall. So then, as we continue to expand our ministry, exerting ourselves vigorously in the work at hand, no doubt Jehovah's blessing will be with us. And notice how this thought is really driven home for us at Luke chapter 13. Luke chapter 13 and verse 24, it says, "Exert yourselves vigorously to get in through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will seek to get in, but will not be able. We do not know what growth or the increases that we will see in the near future. But we need to be ready to welcome any future influx of worshipers. Thus, we pray for Jehovah's continued blessing and direction. May we all be workers with Jehovah, physically, materially, and spiritually. He will certainly bless us as we take proper care of those hastening into his kingdom organization during these final parts of the last days.
Friends, wouldn't you say this is a wonderful program? We really look forward now to our dedication talk, but before we do so, let's show our appreciation with thankful voices and take the time to sing Song 67, Store Up Treasures in Heaven, and then we'll enjoy that part of our program. That's Song 67. Well, friends, it's time for our dedication talk. We look forward to the fine information that will be developed in the theme, Watch How You Build. And this will be given to us by Brother Don Burge, a traveling overseer of Jehovah's Witnesses serving in the San Diego area. Let's listen very carefully as he develops the theme, Watch How You Build. Brother Burge, please.
Hermanos, queremos darles una cordial bienvenida al programa de dedicación de este nuevo Salón del Reino. Este salón es resultado de la hermandad y cooperación de ustedes. Welcome to this Kingdom Hall dedication. For those in the Spanish congregations, that was Spanish. What a joyful occasion as we all share together here, worshiping and reflecting on this project. The dedication portion of the program, which is entitled Watch How You Build, will go way beyond the construction of kingdom halls. It will touch our lives, the lives of our families, the lives of our Bible students, touch the lives of the elders and all of us. Buildings have been used for God's purpose from the times of the temple, the tabernacle, and the synagogues, all the way up to the modern kingdom hall. And we'd like to cover that history because it expands for all of us that above and beyond the moment we live in, the heritage of using buildings for worship extends way back in time. In fact, to start with, the temple. The ancient temple of Jehovah was a center of worship that was noticed financed by David, but built by Solomon. Now, King David entertained a desire to build a house for Jehovah that would contain the Ark of the Covenant, which would be dwelling in the middle of the tent clause in his day. So for this, David purchased the threshing floor, much like this land was purchased many years ago. He purchased the threshing floor on Mount Moriah at the temple site. He amassed gold and silver from the nation of Israel and himself. And are you ready for the figure? Were we astounded at the cost of this building? The temple was $48,337,047 in 1998. That's why I got it wrong. I did it wrong. Let's start again. $48,337,047,047 in 1998 values, as reported in the Insight volume. $48 billion. The temple followed a general plan of the tabernacle There was floors that were overlaid with juniper, a very prime wood of the day, and the ceilings and the walls, are you ready, were covered with gold. Isn't that amazing? The entire temple. An outstanding feature of the construction is that the stones that made into the building of the walls were constructed away from the building site and then brought to the building site, and all of them fit perfectly well. Now, this particular building was dedicated by Solomon himself in the year 1027 BCE. And there he acknowledged what Jehovah had done by means of his father. And here begins our interest in the scriptures. Please, everyone, follow along. We encourage your children to follow along. These meetings are centered on God's word. 1 Kings, the 8th chapter, is the location of Solomon's dedication, the information around the dedication prayer itself, and what he stated at that time. In 1 Kings, the 8th chapter, and verse 23, he said this, and he went on to say, O Jehovah, the God of Israel, there is no God like you in the heavens above or on the earth beneath, keeping the covenant. Now here he's talking about this rich understanding of Jehovah, talking about him, keeping the covenant and the loving kindness toward your loyal servants, who are walking before you with all their heart. This is us, even as then. You who have kept toward your servant David, my father, that which you promised him, so that you made the promise with your own mouth, and with your own hand you have made the fulfillment as at this day. And so the temple was built. But Solomon, being a spiritual man, was careful to keep us from focusing on the physical edifices of those days or the buildings of our day. Look, please, at verse 27. Imagine Jehovah even inspired him to give us this perspective. It says, but will God truly dwell upon the earth? That's an interesting question. What do you think the answer is? The children in the audience, what is the answer? Will God truly dwell on the earth? Can Jehovah really live in any building on earth? And then Solomon answers his own rhetorical question. Look, the heavens, yet the heavens of the heavens themselves cannot contain you. How much less then this house that I have built? So it gave them perspective. They were able to see that the building served a purpose, but certainly it didn't literally hold Jehovah, but was a center of true worship. In time, in fact, moving down in history, in Ezra's day, is the time frame when synagogues first began to be built. Now, the synagogue was more like a neighborhood kingdom hall which had never existed in the previous centuries. For hundreds of years, there was only the tabernacle and the temple. What were these synagogues? How were they shaped? How long were they? We'll leave that up to you to do the research, but you will be shocked to find out the majority of them were the exact basic measurements of a modern kingdom hall. I wonder how that is. In the days of Jesus Christ and his earthly ministry, each town had a synagogue, and the larger towns had more than one. Now, what was the program of worship in the synagogue? Well, if your mind is able to keep track of what we do today, you'll be fascinated by what we did in ancient times. The synagogue was a place of instruction, not sacrifice, as the temple was. The exercises appeared to be praise, prayer, we have that today, recital and reading of scriptures, we have that, exposition and exhortation, or preaching. The most important part of the service was the reading of the first 5 books of the Bible that took place. Are you ready? When did they have their meetings? If their buildings were like kingdom halls, when did they have their meetings? On Mondays, Thursdays, and the Sabbath. How many of you knew that many similarities? Isn't that exciting? Jehovah's worship is so much the same. The encyclopedia, Insight into the Scriptures, which Brother Bilger quoted a moment ago, states again, It was not difficult for the first Jewish Christians to conduct orderly educational Bible study meetings, for the basic pattern had already taken place in the synagogues. We find those similarities. Jewish history also refers to the practice of reading excerpts from the Bible. Now, please open your Bible and imagine yourself in a time capsule. We have just enjoyed a slide program where we did the same. We went back in time through video. But let's mentally go back in the Bible to Luke chapter 4. Let's walk into a synagogue much the size of this kingdom hall. Maybe a little larger, maybe a little smaller. In Luke chapter 4. In Luke chapter 4, we find ourselves at the synagogue in Nazareth. Do you think Jesus had ever been in there? Oh, yes. This is his hometown synagogue. Do you think he knew where the chairs were and the podium and the location of the scripture box? Oh, yes. And so after he entered the synagogue in verse 16 and chapter 4, verse 17, interesting enough, without any ado, so the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. He opened the scroll, found the place in it where it was written, and it said, and he read. Imagine standing there that day. Jehovah's Spirit is upon me, he read, because he anointed me to declare the good news to the poor. He sent me forth to preach a release to the captives and a recovery of sight to the blind, to send the crushed ones away with a release, to preach Jehovah's acceptable year. With that, imagine now, a piece of Isaiah that no one knew who it applied to. They all expected fulfillment yet in the future. He had read it, and in verse 20, look what he says. Do you see that there? With that, he rolled up the scroll. Remember, they were round, and they'd have to be wrapped up. He rolled up the scroll. He handed it back to the attendant on duty, and he sat down, not standing, and his eyes of all the synagogue were intently fixed upon him. He created a moment of anticipation, and verse 21, and then he started to say to them. Now you notice it says started to say, so the entire dialogue is not contained herein, but the power of it was. He said at that moment, today, this scripture that you just heard is fulfilled. Do you think that was an intense moment for those people to realize that he, the Messiah, was right there? The structures were out throughout Israel, synagogues. They were throughout the Roman Empire, you may remember from Paul's travels. So these kingdom hall-like structures were not just in Israel. Like in modern times, they were throughout the then known world where Jehovah's Witnesses, Israelites of old, met. Today we have kingdom halls. How many of you have ever been to the first kingdom hall by a show of hands? Well, maybe you have. It's located at 1228 Pensacola Boulevard in Honolulu, and it's the old Hawaii branch office, now a kingdom hall. Now, how many of you have been there? Aha, you didn't know it. And member of the governing body, Joseph Rutherford, was standing outside the building and asked, what do you think we should call it? And they concluded, Kingdom Hall. Today we call them Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. Today, in most parts of the world, it is not unusual to find two or more congregations meeting in a kingdom hall. You will sometimes find 2 kingdom halls on a property. You'll sometimes find 3 kingdom halls on a property. You'll sometimes find 4 kingdom halls on a property. By a show of hands, how many have ever been in a quadruplex 4 kingdom hall? Isn't that an experience? It's almost like being in an assembly every weekend. Double kingdom halls like this are being built throughout the country and parts of the world. Kingdom halls look different. In Africa and around the world, they're modest cement, brick, metal roofs, no insulation, and dirt floors. But they serve a purpose. And as shocking it is to build such here would look like a shack, in those areas when those buildings are built, they're some of the nicest buildings in the communities. Branch offices extend the construction of walls and roofs and buildings. The kingdom halls, like the ancient synagogues, are places of worship for modern Christians, Jehovah's Witnesses. The branch offices are not places for worship, but they're places for the oversight and administration of the kingdom work on the earth. Now, these branch offices in the world, for you note takers, and by the way, for you note takers, there's going to be an onslaught of statistics and details that are current and contemporary about the work worldwide you may want to jot down. Currently, 110 branch offices around the world, some small, some literally gigantic. These facilities house Bethelites, sometimes in a house, other times in giant complexes. In New York, 3 complexes at Wallkill, New York, Brooklyn, New York, and Paterson, New York. Yes, not Paterson, New Jersey, but Paterson, New York, house over 5,000 Bethelites. Some in this very audience have actually lived, and others have worked temporarily at Bethel for 2 weeks or a month or longer. By a show of hands, how many have worked at World Headquarters for a week or two or were Bethelites in the past? Raise your hand. And we see the united effort to build around the world. These facilities ship books, ship magazines, brochures, audio videotapes, and cassettes around the world, all with a focus on knowledge of God's kingdom and practical application of the Bible in their lives. All of this we experience around the world. Now, these Bethel homes and these kingdom halls that are used, let's focus for a minute now on just not that they're there, but what they do. These kingdom halls and these branch offices act to expand pure worship and push the preaching work to the far pages of the globe. Please take out your dedication program. If you have not done so already, you might want to follow along and turn to the final page, the purpose of the kingdom hall. Let's read together, if you would, what it states there under the purpose of the kingdom hall. It says, "This good news of the kingdom will be preached in all inhabited earth for a witness to all the nations. Jehovah's Witnesses in some 94,000 congregations worldwide use their kingdom halls as centers for telling the good news in their local communities. The kingdom hall is an educational center serving not only Jehovah's Witnesses, but all persons in the community interested in understanding God's Word. All the meetings are for study and discussion, and thereby promoting knowledge of God's kingdom and the practical application of the Bible principles in daily life. Faith and hope in a government by God is strengthened, and all interested persons are welcome." Just like in ancient times, the building of modern times are a center for us to now meet and then explode into the community, door to door, on the streets and in public areas, reaching the people, taking the message of God's government. Please, if you will, open your Bibles, if you will, to Acts, the 20th chapter, verse 20 and 21. Fascinating as it is, a large portion of the Christian Greek scriptures is dedicated to an individual preacher of the good news named the Apostle Paul. And in his meanderings throughout the globe, in his preaching and his sermons, we capture the spirit of the ancient, primitive congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, the Christian congregation in the beginning. Acts 20:20. And their activity as they went forth, remember now, with no kingdom halls. No centers of pure worship were built in the first century to our knowledge. No physical buildings such as kingdom halls were built in the first century. They lived and worked mostly out of homes. Though they preached in synagogues, the synagogues were not centers of Christian worship. Verse 20 then showed their activity. While he says, "I did not hold back from telling you any of the things that were profitable, nor from teaching you publicly and from house to house. And verse 21 is very insightful. But I thoroughly bore witness both to Jews and to Greeks about the repentance toward God and faith in our Lord Jesus. So these Bethel complexes around the world facilitate this expansion now in hundreds and hundreds of languages. Do you know how many languages Jehovah's Witnesses preach in? It has never been printed. We know how many languages we print in, but we do not know how many languages we preach in. It would almost be impossible to tabulate. It is so grandiose a figure. In San Diego, we originally preached in English and Spanish, and now there's a multitude of other languages. We'd like at this point in time to focus on the growth in one particular area of the Spanish population. For this purpose, we'd like to invite to the platform Brother Timothy Dunn, who's the district convention overseer for the Spanish in San Diego. And Brother Dunn is replacing Brother Shimkus, who couldn't be here. So Brother Dunn, please come to the platform and let's share some thoughts on the Spanish growth. Brother Dunn, I'm very excited to have you here, and I'm sure we all are. Welcome. And we look forward to hearing about all of San Diego that you can give us a clear picture on. And
can I thank you first?
Yes,
thank
you may.
for including us in your special day.
Well, we're glad to include you.
We as the Spanish say, in carne viva, that means in our own flesh, we fully understand that this day is special to you. It's somewhere between euphoria and exhaustion. You don't know whether to sing or cry. Because everything you've done has finally come to fruition, and thank you for including us.
Thank you, Brother Dunn. We're going to sort of just spur you on to tell us a little bit about the growth in San Diego through a few questions, but to start with, how many Spanish congregations do we have in San Diego County, or a little background?
In the actually the Spanish work pretty well started in San Diego in the mid-60s. By the mid-70s, there was probably 5 or 6 congregations in San Diego, plus a couple in the Valley and a couple in Escondido. As of right now, in that same area, there are 85 congregations, 4 circuits, and we have our own district convention.
My goodness, 85 congregations, wow.
So there's been incredible growth. Now, we will have to admit in the last few years it's begun to moderate a bit. But in our hall, we just divided the 1st of May, which left us 2 elders in each congregation. We hope the English feel very bad.
Moving right along.
We don't have a lot of arguments in the body.
Maybe you could help us, because of this expansive growth, what would you say the average elders are in the Spanish congregations?
You mean how long they've been in the truth?
Or, yeah, and or how many there are, both. Maybe you could give us sort of an overview.
Well, areas differ, but in the intercity, in the immediate downtown, most of the congregations are working with about 2 or 3 elders.
Oh my goodness.
When we divided the new congregation, the presiding overseer was appointed as an elder perhaps 4 years ago. Secretary was appointed as an elder in December, and the service overseer is disabled.
Well, we need brothers to reach out in Spanish then, obviously. The growth is so fast.
But I will mention that within the congregation, the growth factor is still there. Pioneers that are physically able to function, because we have some on the infirm list, are still capable of conducting 6, 8 more studies. Although we'll have to admit the days of having a waiting list and having 11 studies are probably been affected more by the economy and the circumstances. The brothers average or probably 0.8 Bible studies. The activity and the meeting attendance is generally 150%. That's a normal meeting. Anything less than that, we really think we have to start our shepherding. Circuit overseers visit, 200%. The commemoration, 300% is what our goal is, and oftentimes we're able to accomplish that.
Can you give us, you gave us an idea of congregations. What kind of numbers are we talking about in the greater San Diego area that speak Spanish and attend district convention and so forth?
Well, we mentioned that total congregations assigned to this district convention are probably 105. 85, or the area that was originally covered, because the original circuit went from the border to Santa Ana and from the ocean to El Centro. But in the immediate area, that 85 probably is 65 in the immediate San Diego area. And again, each one of these are just kind of anecdotal, but when we became part of the immediate San Diego area, that one congregation has divided 25 times.
And your attendance this year at the district convention would have been
16,000.
16,000 people. Well, what year did you say that there was, like what you said, about 5 or 7 congregations?
Mid-70s, about 75, 76.
So when I left for Bethel in 1973, there was only 7 congregations here, and now you're telling me there's 85.
In the mid-60s, they actually pulled brothers from the English and put them in a Spanish congregation because they had surnames, Gonzalez, Silva. Most of them couldn't speak Spanish.
Well, now if you took all of them, we wouldn't have any English. So what is your experience with regard to the need for Kingdom Halls in the San Diego, Brother Dunn? Maybe you can give us some perspective there.
Well, we've been involved in quite a few projects, most of them in the inner city. And in the 81 was the first Kingdom Hall that was ever initiated by a Spanish congregation. And from that one congregation, like I say, is the one that divided 25 times. But from that, when it was finished, when we paid off the mortgage, then we turned around and borrowed again. We took that and acquired a Kingdom Hall that was they were going to sell so they could build Plaza and Division. We bought it. Then we invested $40,000 from that refi and rebuilt it, put 4 Spanish congregations, and gave another $20,000 to Pacific Beach. Within 6 months, we found another property, a historical building in the inner city. We refinanced that same hall again, took out $120,000 and paid it off. And within 8 months, all of these mortgages are going to be paid off, and then we're going to figure out
what's next.
We don't want to cancel our financial obligation. We want to say, because each one of these Kingdom Halls now have 3 congregations. Our possibility is 1 additional in each one of these, and we're going to be. But we're not in the greatest need. The greatest need is in South Bay, Imperial Beach, where you have 2 Kingdom Halls, both with 5. They're actually not stagnated by any means. There's a growth factor, but a lot of times, if you don't have the space, you have no way to bring in more people. So there's a desperate need there, and I think to some degree, the methods that we have used in the past, were very unique and singular. Now, what absolutely positively has to happen is there has to be a collaboration, and that's the only way with the economy as it is.
Well, we enjoyed having you here. Would you like to say any final comment?
¿Qué diremos? Queremos expresar gratitud por la hermandad, la habilidad de funcionar aquí en grupo, de entender que aunque ellos hablan inglés, son de la misma religión, ¿no es cierto?
And in English, what did you just tell the audience?
We love and appreciate you.
Ah, very good. That sounds good. Brother Dunn, thank you so much for coming. So could we say, without a doubt, even though we only represent a small portion of the San Diego area, can we say that without a doubt, now that we are not only Spanish, but we're English, we're Vietnamese and Russian, etc., can we say without a doubt in the future we are going to work together to build more Kingdom Halls? You note takers, you're about to get some real blessings. Here are some ditties from around the world that are really exciting. Africa Kingdom Hall construction. Africa alone, 1,074 new Kingdom Halls were built during the last 1 year. 4 a day. Are you excited? That is exciting information. Regional Building Committee, take note of this. If you thought you were busy before, get ready. 2,100 new Kingdom Halls were built In 92 lands, an average of 22 a week since November of 99. 22 Kingdom Halls a week around the world. Clearly, Jehovah's rich blessing is on this remarkable activity. But there's more. The Kingdom Halls create a need at the branches. Would you like to know statistically, currently, right up to date? Here we go. The United States branch production, here we are. The production at the U.S. branch office alone in books is 34,848,542 books in 1 year. That's an 87% increase in a 5-year time window. Are we growing in the U.S.? Oh, yes. The U.S. branch produced 271,621 magazines during the past year, and that's a 16% increase over a 5-year window in the U.S. branch. It is growing so fast that several large projects, including purchasing of new high-speed presses and the ancillary equipment that goes along with them for 6 branches, is now being purchased for, are you ready? $60 million for 6 printing presses around the world. That is exciting, and the equipment to go with it. These Bible-based publications then play a role into our Kingdom Halls, into our book bags, and into the field, spreading the good news. Incredibly as it may seem, the $60 million figure for construct and building an addition of new printing presses this year is just a drop in the bucket. Where does all the money come from? Voluntary donations from our pockets and our bank accounts of each individual person, like the widow's mite, contributing to the whole. Here's the way it was put in 1 Chronicles with regard to the temple construction. The people gave way to rejoicing over their making of volunteer offerings. For it was with a complete heart that they made voluntary offerings to Jehovah. And even David the king himself rejoiced with great joy. If we build new Kingdom Halls, they'll cost $1 million. We hope to build maybe 2 on one property. That will be a considerable savings. We're prayerfully considering the possibility of putting apartments there for retiring circuit overseers that have served 30, 40, 50, 60, and more years. These are exciting times. Now, what are the reasons for the acceleration with regard to printing so many books and so much literature? Well, more statistics. But the next few statistics are going to stagger the imagination. Because in an environment where many witnesses have been heard to say over the last 10 to 15 years that the work in the U.S. is slowing down. Are you ready? In the United States branch, we have exceeded over 1 million publishers August of 2002, and in the last service year, we hit a 3% increase, the largest increase in 7 years. Return visits are up 8%, and Bible studies a staggering 11% increase, and we hope still rising. And yet it's not just in the big lands of the United States. How about the little dinky Turks and Caicos Islands? The entire Turks and Caicos Islands have only 125 Jehovah's Witnesses, 17,000 local inhabitants, and yet what are they doing? They had a 9% increase and an 18% increase in return visits and a 20% increase in their Bible studies. So wherever we are, whether it's the Turks and Caicos Islands in the Caribbean or here in the greater United States in so many languages, the growth goes on. Field service and taking the field service serious is actually the reason for our existence. No, we were not brought into this organization for our own salvation as the pinnacle of God's purpose, but rather the proclamation of God's name and His kingdom and the work being done on the earth is the priority, and we are a byproduct of that. And the ransoming of our lives is very important, but it should be more important to us now that we're saved to give back into the pot. Give back into the pot financially, give back into the pot when that Kingdom Hall was built here. Brothers and sisters, without showing your hands, but in your hearts, how many of you say, the next time they build, I'm going to be there and do something. I don't want to miss out. You thought we were sitting over here working hard. The brothers proved we were working hard and eating hard. And you missed it. Next time, maybe you can come and help. And not all of us can come. Some of us are elderly or otherwise are unable, and we know we have your prayers. Growth in Southern California, in the California Circuit area, and California Circuit 1 basically overlaps the circuit that Brother Garza is now retiring out of, and a small portion of Brother Shimka's circuit, which runs along this border over towards Euclid Kingdom Hall, for the Spanish and the English. Now, what is going on in that area? This statistic comes to us from the City of San Diego Multicultural Community Relations Police Department Subdivision at 54th and University, where we've met with the police department, and here's their recent survey. In the City Heights area alone, 82 different nationalities and languages are spoken. 82. Move over Spanish and English. There are 70,000 Vietnamese, 30,000 Lao, 60,000 Chinese, and it goes on and on and on. The largest Iraqi population outside of Iraq is in El Cajon. Did you know that? In San Diego, we have English congregations, Spanish, Japanese, Filipino, Tagalog, sign language congregations. And we have groups in Cambodian, Lao, Russian, Vietnamese, and now meetings are being held in Chinese, Ethiopian Amharic, and in Arabic, and probably others. The growth potential here, once these pioneers and publishers learn the language, will be phenomenal. The English growth, probably more than any other area of the United States, we often hear disparaging thoughts about how the territory has dried up and the people are no longer responsive. But sad to say, those comments often come from those, bless their hearts, are only preaching when people are not home. But when you preach when they are home, or you go when they're receptive, as stated in the Watchtower and Kingdom Ministry, if you go when they're receptive, in the evenings and on the weekends, we are finding in English phenomenal growth. I'm pleased to announce at this time, probably to the surprise of most of us, that the Chula Vista Canyon View congregation is now on the seldom worked territory list for the United States of America. You don't even know what I'm talking about. Let me explain. When we say seldom worked territory, we mean that letter on the information board that says, would you like to go for a week or two to where? Nebraska, North Dakota, Wyoming. But now, Chula Vista has grown so fast that the Canyon View congregation last year alone made 150 new territory maps. 150 new maps. It's impossible for them to reach all of those people. Brothers, is anybody excited yet? Spanish, English, and every other language, and we turn to Isaiah. We're just a few weeks ago, we could not have read the scripture and understood it. But now that we've been to the book study in both Spanish and English and other languages, we go to Isaiah, the 60th chapter. And I debated, should I read this scripture? It's deep, it's profound. Will it go over everybody's heads? Of course not. We just studied it. So you, while I read, you make the application. You give the talk to yourself. Tell yourself, what does all this mean in verse 8, Isaiah 60? Who are these that are coming flying just like a cloud? The eyes look onto the horizon. Like doves to their bird households. For in me the islands themselves will keep hoping. The ships of Tarshish also as at first. in order to bring your sons from far away with silver and their gold being with them, to the name of Jehovah your God and to the Holy One of Israel. For he will have beautified you. And the foreigners will actually build your walls, and their own kings will minister to you. For in my indignation I shall have struck you, but in my goodwill I shall certainly have mercy upon you. We know those ships and those doves are the ships bringing people into the truth to the tune of 250,000 a year in Jehovah's organization, which may accelerate at any given time. The gold and the silver shows that our wealth is really the world's wealth that we're bringing and we're giving. We're not worrying about what we drive. We're not worrying about what's in the parking lot that we drive. We're worrying about what Jehovah has. And we give more to this building and these branches and this work than we do to ourselves. And the result, verse 22. Isaiah, thousands of years before the event of what we're experiencing today, wrote these words. And today you and I sit in the middle of the explosion. The little one himself will become 1,000, and the small one a mighty nation, and I myself, Jehovah, shall speed it up in its own time. Through the eyes of Brother Heb, we went back into the 50s. Through the eyes of Brother Dunn, we went back into the 70s, and look what's happened, an explosion around the world. How many of you would agree that on this moment and in this time that we should dedicate this building to Jehovah God forevermore, or as long as he wants to use it? How many? Let's look at the scriptures in 1 Kings, and then we shall offer this Kingdom Hall in prayer to Jehovah. 1 Kings chapter 8, where we began our interest in the dedication